Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Legal Unicorns with me, Rob Green. And today I am absolutely delighted to be welcomed, both of us in Cape Town, I believe. I think if you are here today,
Yes.
by a fantastic lawyer who I've happened to know for a couple of years now, and bump into occasionally at industry events, and I have appeared on her podcast, which we'll get into shortly. But I'm delighted to be joined today by Rori saying Mzozoyana. Is that right? Did I
Yes.
pronounce that
Yes.
right?
Good
Wonderful.
job.
Thank you so much. um, so look, Rory, in short, is a genuine thought leader in the industry, and I mean that having met many lawyers, tens of thousands over the years. She is someone who I find to be incredibly passionate about the subject of law, the industry of law, the younger generation coming through, people that she can genuinely assist, and like I say, she is someone that I admire, I look at and see and read the articles on, and I'm really absolutely delighted that she's joined me today. Um, she started you did your undergraduate at Rhodes University, receiving your Bachelor of Arts and LLB, and then went on to complete your LLM at Wits University. You've trained and worked at some of the top firms, not just in South Africa, but across the world as well. Bowmans, Norton, Rose, Cleary Gottlieb, if I remember rightly, as well.
Hmm.
And then you've moved latterly in house, which gives you a nice breadth of experience, not just in South Africa and across the African continent, but also internationally as well. And along with your an amazing career to date, you've started your what you call, and I know you refer to as your passion project, but I think it's going a little bit further than that now, and it's becoming a genuine movement, which is MoLAWoo, which I know you're hopefully going to tell me again what the meaning of the word in its real language, which is a mentorship for young lawyers, and you're doing some amazing work on that front. So again, Rory, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob, and for that very kind introduction.
Yeah, well, look, we've been trying to organise this for a while, so I'm glad we finally got to do it. Like I mentioned earlier, it's always nice to bump into you at industry events, and I think the last one we did was up in Johannesburg when I was
Mm.
speaking at the legal tech event, and then I could hear in the background, I heard Rob, and I turned around and there you are. I was like, oh, this is so nice. It's so nice to bump into you at these events. But it just goes to show as well that you're really in tune with the industry and where the industry is going, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you today. Um, so I'm going to I'm going to jump
Hi,
into
Rob. I think you're frozen
the
there for a
questions that I
bit.
have for you with respect of um, that I really want to get an understanding of you as a professional and as a person. Um, we have the Legal Unicorns podcast is really designed and is geared up to interview the
Hi, Rob.
people who are really making a difference to the industry, and are really going to be the future of the industry very much, and are those that are redesigning the template, if you like. That's really what my podcast, Legal Unicorns, is all about across the African continent. And I genuinely believe you are one of those people. So I'd really like to try and understand if you could, if you could take us on a journey of you and where you come from, how you grew up, where you grew up, and then what prompted you through your studies to get involved in the legal field.
Sure. So I am from a little town called Butterworth in the Eastern Cape. And all kids from Butterworth, we call each other Butter Kids. So I'm a Butter Kid. Um, and I was born in the Eastern Cape. I went to school in the Eastern Cape. For high school, I went to boarding school in Grahamstown. So I went to Victoria Girls High, and then I proceeded to go to Rhodes. And what got me into law was actually my dad. So my dad did not have a university education, and he was like a businessman, like having shops in the Eastern Cape. And he was born ahead of his time, and he had this passion for law. And I remember, like, we were kids, he would take us during the week, like, we'd bunk school, and then we'd go to like the local match court and just listen to court cases. And he really wanted to be a lawyer. That was like a passion thing for him. He would follow, like, um, uh, if there was like a trial happening on TV, he would be like besotted with it. And you could see that, because he was born black during apartheid, he just never got the opportunity. But he had this love of law and love of reading, even though he didn't, um, proceed with a higher education. And he passed on that love of reading to me. And so as a kid, like, I used to read all the time. Like, wherever I could find time to read, like, literally you'd find me with a book somewhere. And he really encouraged us. He would literally give us money for reading. If he caught you reading, he'd give you like 50 cents or something, because he was so passionate about it. And I think that's where I got my love for the law from, because I was exposed to it, even though no one in my family had gone to university. Like, my mom was the first person in our family to actually get a university degree, and she got it after we were born. Like, I remember as a 10-year-old, my mom, like, studying for her undergrad degree. So I come from humble beginnings. As I said, like, no one in my family was a lawyer, but my dad had such a passion for it, and he passed on that passion to me. And because I loved reading, automatically people will say, if you love reading and you're great at history and writing stories, you will definitely, do well in law. And so from like a young age, even primary school throughout high school, like, the adults in my life sort of like drove me in that direction. And even the guidance teacher in high school, I was like, law is definitely the place for you to go. And you're very talkative and you like to argue, so definitely 100% that's the path you should follow. So that's sort of what led me into law. And as you said, I went to study law at Rhodes University. But the one thing I must say about my upbringing is, even though I was one of the lucky people within sort of my community to be exposed to law because of my dad's initiatives, I had a very limited understanding of what a legal career was, right? And like, the richest person in the neighborhood was a lawyer, and he did like criminal law or like divorce law. I had like no idea about commercial law and mergers and acquisitions and all of this sexy stuff. And it's only, I think it was my second or third year that I actually of university studying law, that I realized how broad the legal profession was, and how you've got these different and unique practice areas beyond just your normal criminal law or labor law, divorce law. So it's been quite a journey for me. And as I said, I come from this really small town in the Eastern Cape, and sort of through like working hard in university, I did really well in matric. I got a scholarship at Rhodes University, and I was able to pay for my studies like that.
Yeah, that is, for me, that sounds like you've had quite a lot of really fantastic influences, or people around you that have sort of helped you. Certainly, your father, clearly. Well, look,
Okay.
I think that's fascinating because, um, first of all, if we just go, obviously, for anyone listening to this that isn't from South Africa, um, that doesn't understand where the Eastern Cape is. I've been there. I know where it is. I've driven through the whole of it actually on a road trip. Um, it is. It would probably be fair to say that it's a part of the country that has seen tough times
Mm,
over the years. And although it is stunningly beautiful, I must point out places like Hogsback and even the town of Grahamstown and places like that
mm,
are fantastic to visit. But it's a hard place to grow up, right?
mm.
It's not an easy place to grow up, and
No, it's not.
especially given the time when you were growing up, as you mentioned during apartheid.
Mm. It is sort of a difficult place to grow up. But what I think is fortunate in my childhood is that I grew up in the Transkei, right? And the Transkei during apartheid, for just people who don't know South African history, the Transkei was a what do you call this? An independent republic. And so it was a Bantustan. So it was literally like the one. I think there were like four Bantustans during apartheid, and literally black people. You'd have like a leader of the Bant, like a president, a black president, and so it was sort of sheltered from South Africa. And a lot of the apartheid laws that applied to the rest of the South Africa were not implemented as harshly, and so you could have a bit of diversity in the Bantustan. And literally, like we would drive an hour away to East London, and I remember having to have a passport to move into the rest of the parts of South Africa. So that's like an interesting little quirk in my background and the place where I grew up.
Mm.
So the Bantustan where Butterworth was called the Transkei, and that also really influenced my growing up and sort of seeing the difference between like the Transkei and sort of the freedoms that black people had within the Bantustan. And then you drive an hour away and you have to have a passport and you need to move into East London, and it's like a totally different environment.
I think what you've I mean, obviously I've been here, as you know, for a number of years now, so and I'm constantly learning and educating myself about the past, not too distant past, as we know. But it's interesting for people outside of the country to listen to you, what you're saying there, and to get they should get a real feel for what it was like for a young black child growing up that would have to have a passport to go to other parts of the country. That I think will really hit home to give a sense of where you've come from, but also what people were having to put up with as recently as the 80s slash early 90s. And it goes to show how you grew up and the strength of your character. And it's very interesting as well that you say about your father, who clearly had a passion for the law. I mean, that's fascinating that he used to go to the courts to listen to what's happening and take you as well, almost like it's a sporting event, almost, if I dare say,
No,
like taking
literally
you
it
to
was.
the
It
to
was
the
like
game.
it literally was like that. And I mean, my dad was not educated by any stretch of the imagination. I think he like went up to like the equivalent of like standard nine. I don't even think he had matric, but he was very well read because he loved to read books, and it was like entertainment. And in retrospect, I was so lucky to have had that exposure, because it's one thing to talk to kids, but to actually expose them directly to careers that are outside of the norm, right? Because everyone around me was either a teacher or a nurse. You had one or two like lawyers around, but my dad had no connection to law. Like none of his friends were lawyers. No one in our family had been a lawyer. It was just a passion for him, and he just tried to expose his kids to it as much as possible.
And that's clearly shaped you, and it's clearly shaped what you're involved in now as well, which is fantastic. Now, I love that. I often think about. I know you're a parent as well, and you know that I am, because we've talked about the school runs before and the traffic in Cape Town. But when we tried to meet for coffee before,
Mm,
um, I it's amazing when you start to think back about the influence that your parents' actions had on the way that you parent, and I'm sure that you're the same. I often think of the things that my mum and my dad said to me when I was growing up, and the things that they did for me, and how much joy I got out of certain things that I try to replicate with my own children as well. So no, it's
mm,
well, not only did your father clearly shape your career and your life, but clearly he's unlocked something in there that you've then taken on with your own projects. But do you think so? As you were moving, well, completing your LLB in Grahamstown, which again I know is Rhodes is a fantastic university. You then moved to Joburg to to do your masters in law, right? At Wits. Um,
yes, but
and
I
so
actually did my
you moved
master's.
yourself up to Joburg.
I moved myself up to Joburg, yes.
And sorry, you were going to say you did your masters.
Yes, so I actually did my master's. after doing my articles. So I moved up to Joburg to do my articles at Bowmans. And then in my first year as an associate, so I did my articles for 2 years in 2007, 2008. And then in 2009, I enrolled for my master's at Wits.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
right. Now, I don't have your CV in front of me, so let me please just ask if you. So, first of all, getting into Bowman's is, I mean, obviously one of the top firms in the country, so that is fantastic for your articles. I guess you must have done quite well in your exams. They don't.
I did.
They obviously take the best.
I did do well in my exams, really, but I wasn't like an A student by any stretch of the imagination. But what I think really helped me was, first of all, I woke up to the fact that there was VAC work to be done in the big firms in late, like in third year, right? And I was more than halfway through my career, and again, it was a lack of exposure in terms of like how big law is. And I can clearly, vividly remember the first time I saw a Bowman's poster in our on campus at the law department, and I was like, what's Bowman's? And then I googled, literally, like my eyes were like this. I was like, there's a big five firms, there's Bowman's. And then I went down the rabbit hole about the big firms in South Africa. Like, I didn't even know that you could have firms of like more than two or three lawyers, literally. And this was in third year of being at Rhodes University. And that's the moment when I said, my world about law opened up, because I went to study law. I thought I was going to go do labor law, divorce law, or something, and open a practice with like two or three lawyers. And then I literally found out about the big firms during that time. And I sort of, as I said, went down the rabbit hole, Googled stuff, and then I like sent in my applications to do VAC work. So what actually helped was the fact that I had done VAC work. So I did VAC work at Weber Wenzel, and I did VAC work at Bowman's while I was in varsity. And also the other thing I did was I went on sort of student work program in the US in fourth year, which I paid for. Um, After having like
Right.
worked at the local restaurant. Can you hear me, Rob?
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I worked throughout university, which I think is the one thing that helped me get articles. So it's not just your marks. And I say this, and I know we'll get into my mentorship program now, but I say this to a lot of like young lawyers, that you need to get as much work experience as possible in university. You need to work on your CV before you need to apply in final year. And I did exactly that. Like I was tutoring, subordinating, working at the university since second year. I paid for myself to be able to go to the US and like work at McDonald's and flip burgers in Boston in third year. I had done work at Weber Wenzel and Bowman's by the time I applied for articles. So, and those are the things that got me into Bowman's to do my articles in final year. So it wasn't a wake up a month before I need articles and apply. Literally, it's something that I was working on for like 2 years before I got that opportunity.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, for any young student listening, which I'm sure there will be, because obviously that's the area that your mentorship is in. I think that's really sound advice, because as I've spoken at many universities, luckily across the world, and I always tell the students, certainly the ones who are just starting. You need to get as much work experience as you can, and not often that doesn't necessarily. And you've just mentioned flipping burgers in Boston, and often it doesn't necessarily mean from a career perspective that you have to have legal VAC work. I mean, that's ideal scenario, but a lot of times that employers are really just looking that you've adapted, and you've put yourself out there, and you've worked, and you've actually shown some willing to do a day's work, as it were, and that can stand you in good stead. I know from my own career, when I left university, the fact that I filled up my summers and winters and all my time working helped me certainly secure interviews. Anyway, so that is sound advice, and the fact that you got the money together and paid for yourself to go to the US as well is again shows that sort of determination within you, and that willingness to really want more from life, which is which is excellent. And thankfully for the law, you didn't in South Africa, and some of the people you've helped, you didn't get stuck flipping burgers. You came back to continue to start your career, which is great. Okay, this is giving us a really nice picture of you and how you've developed. And again, I'm getting a sense of someone who's determined, someone who's very, very keen to work hard and to take opportunities as they come. And what is interesting there, where you and I often have this conversation with university professors, is where you've said it in your third year is where you sort of discovered the law firms, if you like. And again, I'm not knocking your university. But I do sometimes wonder why the commercial aspect of law and the law firms and the market itself is not introduced from an early stage for students. I think that's something that they might be missing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, look, the law firms are doing a much better job now because they have these career fairs and they go early and they talk to students. But I think the universities themselves don't focus on commercial subjects. Like, you don't have like the law degree itself, and that's like, we could have like another podcast episode just focusing on the structure of the LLB degree in South Africa and the lack of courses around practical commercial law. I mean, when I was in varsity, the only commercial stuff we did was contract law, and business law was just, we spent the whole semester registering a company and learning about the duties of directors. I mean, that is not proper commercial law, and the world of commercial law and finance law is so much bigger, and to me it's more interesting than the other type of stuff that you learn in varsity. And I mean, and we'll probably get to this later on, like one of the things I'm doing now is courses for UCT on banking and finance law and commercial law, precisely because of that reason. There is such a lack of courses and access to that type of law, and you can only essentially find it in the big law firms, and the big law firms are literally like 5% of the legal market in South Africa. And so I think it's quite a shame, that and I get, and I'm on the ground, right? Like, I'm talking to a lot of young lawyers. I get DMs all the time on social media, and people are so hungry for that knowledge and for those skills, and there's a lack of courses to do it, and there's just not enough lawyers practicing that type of law to be able to like upskill lawyers, and there isn't enough opportunities for lawyers to do commercial law in the South African market.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's something that I've I've noticed myself, and from some of the conversations that I've had at the likes of UCT and UWC and Stellenbosch, when I've gone pre-COVID, before when I was allowed on campus, and I'd go and talk to the in person. I'd go and talk to the students, and what I always surprised me was that this sort of, and again, I'm not knocking them or the establishment. It's just the way the courses are structured is really just this lack of real understanding of exactly what the market is like. Yes, they're getting them prepared technically for the law, which I'm sure that's what you witnessed during your degree. But really, there's got to be an element of what does this look like? What does the job market look like? What is it? Where am I going to end up working? What does that small firm over there do differently to that giant firm over there? Where do they all fit within the industry? And again, we won't touch on this now, but maybe at a later stage. One of the big things that lawyers need to know nowadays is business development, and that's something that I'm sure you've addressed in your mentorships. But it's something that the universities could really help prepare lawyers for that sort of commercialization of the market. But back to you and your career in your early stages, when you were at Bowmans in your candidate attorneyship and then beyond. Is there anything that stands out in terms of decisions that you've made? Maybe going to America to flip burgers, maybe breaking off to do the LLM. Is there anything that stood out to you that you think has really shaped your career today? Is there any decisions that you've made that you think might have shaped you?
There is one clear, like, when you said that, like, one clear thing came to my mind, and it was the decision. I think I took in second year as an associate. So I'd been at Bowmans for 4 years. And I used to think, I first of all, I'm going into a law firm, and I thought I'm here to do a job, right? And I have an employer, and I've got a lifetime guarantee for work. But I actually realized that all lawyers within law firms are actually entrepreneurs, and they're running their own small little businesses, and that's what building a practice is, right? And so it was a huge wake up call for me, because I then started thinking about, okay, in the next 4 or 5 years, I want to make partner. Do I have clients? I don't have clients. And the other thing was, I was in a practice area that I really didn't like. I was in tax, and I wanted to move to banking and finance law, but Bowmans didn't have a banking and finance law at that time, a department at that time. And so, but halfway through my second year, we had a partner come into Bowmans to start a banking and finance department. And I was like, yes, I've been waiting for this opportunity. I've been wanting to do banking and finance law. I'm doing tax, it's commercial, but it's not exactly what I want. It's not exactly what I want to do.
Mm,
And so I then, started talking to partners. I was like, okay, I want to move to banking and finance. And then everyone was telling me, no, Rory, it's too late to change. You're already a second year tax associate, and you can't move to banking and finance. And that just didn't make sense to me, and the decision to
mm,
actually push through and make the change happen for myself, I think, was critical. And that's the one decision that got me to where I am today. And so, I went over people's heads, like the people I was talking to. I just literally went straight to the heads of the departments. I had already been preparing for the move like a year in advance. That's why I went to do my master's at Wits in corporate in company law, because I knew I wanted to transition over. So I was halfway through doing this master's. I'd already done other smaller sort of courses through Wits around finance and finance law, and I already had a CV prepared. So I literally went to the banking and finance director, head of department directly, and I said, "This is my CV. Hi, my name is Roy. I'm from the tax department. I want to move. I want to move to banking and finance. Here's my CV." And just taking charge of your own career was an epiphany for me, and it really, like, from that point on, I've always used the same approach, because it really worked for me. It worked well for me at that stage in my career. And I'm so proud of myself for being bold enough to stand up for myself, even though I literally had no power. And I was like this little second year associate, who didn't have connections, who doesn't come from a family where, there's lots of lawyers who are like clients of the firm. So I didn't have that network in Joburg, but I managed to stand up for myself and just go for what I want, and I managed to actually move. And everyone was then shocked, like, how did you manage to move? And everyone's like, yeah, you're going to have to start learning banking and finance from scratch. I'm like, I'm humble enough to learn. And it's shocking for me that people would say that to me as a second year associate, when I know there are people who are partners and move practice departments. So I'm like, certain rules apply for certain people, and I've seen people who are partners and they leave and they go to the bar and become pupils. And I always say, you have to have a long-term view of your career. If you're going to be a lawyer for 50 years, taking a detour in year 4 or 5 will mean nothing in the bigger scheme of things. And so people often have this insular view of their careers, and they think in terms of like the short term, like 1 or 2 years. I'm like, and any experience as a lawyer is never wasted, right? So I use my tax experience now a lot in the deals that I work on. And so it's the one piece of advice I always give to my mentees is, it's never too late to change course. It's never too late to follow your dreams. And especially within the legal industry, you will hear a lot of no's, right? But deep down what you're passionate about and what type of law you want to practice. So don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And you need to advocate for yourself, because no one else is losing sleepless nights over your career.
I love that. I think that's brilliant. That's really incredible. I'm so pleased you shared that with us. Thank you so much, because I generally mean it. I think that's that is so wonderful to hear that you first of all, that you recognized very early on to take control of your own career,
Mm,
um, and and again, I'm not nothing against Bowmans. They're a fantastic company and law firm, but obviously with size comes a lot of bureaucracy. And I also started my career in big listed companies, and you find people are not always that friendly. They often will tell you, no, you can't do that. No, you're never going to get there. You're never going to go that. You know, it's too late to start that. And obviously, you were told the same thing, but you knew in your mind that you could well, the word you used there was humble enough to learn and to keep learning and to know what to do to get yourself to where you wanted to go. You wouldn't take no for an answer, and you took control of your career. And I think that is absolutely brilliant advice for anyone at any stage in their career. Um, Over my career, I've dealt with a lot of what we call second career lawyers. So people who've come out of, they might have even made it to CEO of a big company, and then they've decided, you know what, I don't want to do this. I actually want to follow my passion and be a lawyer. And they've changed career in their 40s, and they've had to be humble enough to start at the bottom again and go. And I'm always admiring of people who know what they want, and then they go for it. And that's exactly where you've come from. I think they are some takeaway lessons for anyone listening to this, that don't take no for an answer. Take control of your career and be humble enough to know that it's not going to come easy, is it? Like you said, you don't come from a family with all those business connections. So you couldn't just walk in and go, I want to be in banking. You had to really work at it and had to prepare in advance. So that is amazing. I've got a question for you. As you've gone on your career, and we've kind of sort of touched on it there in terms of the influences around you in the workplace. Certainly not all of them would have been negative. Some of them would have been, I'm sure, positive and boosted you and helped you on your way. But in terms of your journey to date, have you, how have people reacted around you? Have you found that people within the firms you've worked for have been largely supportive in your community where you live, your friend group, your family? Have you been largely supported on that journey, or have you found, like many people find, lots of hurdles in their way to get to where they want? How have you found your journey so far?
So, I've been supported a lot by my community. So my family, my friends have been amazing. My in-laws are also like amazing. My husband, like, so in terms of I call it the fire brigade, like the people who come to your house when your house is burning. I have an amazing fire brigade, and they've always been very supportive. In terms of professional support, I always say there are no bad firms. So I can't say this firm is, and obviously the stuff I deal with is sexism and racism, and I can't you can never paint a firm with like one brush. You can never say this firm is racist or they're anti-transformation. You've got people in firms who are racist, you've got people in firms who are sexist and misogynist, and so everywhere you go, and I think it's in sort of in most professions, in any work environment, you will have those sort of people. And this is where taking charge of your career comes in. If you are placed with someone who is like that, then you won't thrive regardless, right? And it's a toxic work environment, and you should try and escape it as much as possible and like move to be with other people. So throughout my career in all the firms I've worked for, so I've worked at Bowmans, I've worked at Norton Rose Fulbright, I've worked in New York at Cleary Gottlieb Steen in Hamilton. And in all of those law firms, I have long-standing relationships. I've had amazing mentors. I've had amazing support. Those firms continue to support me even now with my work, and it's nice now because I'm a client, right? I'm in banking and finance, and so I get to give people work, and give
Yeah.
the directors who trained me a hard time. And so but having said that, I've also had bad experiences. I've had experiences where I'm sitting in a department and I'm not getting work for weeks on end, and you get frustrated. And I've been in departments where juniors were take white male juniors were taken to meetings instead of me. were told to give me work and I'm 2 years ahead. So I've had all of those experiences, and I'm sure for most, female lawyers or black lawyers, that's nothing new, right? You will deal with discrimination throughout your career. You will deal with being undermined throughout your career, and the only thing you can do is, determine how you react. You can't um, change external factors. You can do what you can do, and you can decide how to react. You can decide in terms of taking charge of your own career. And that's why early on, for example, I did a lot of short courses. I did it, like I studied my masters, because at some point in my career, I was in a rut and I felt like I wasn't growing. I wasn't getting the training I required. And I'm like, well, I can pick up a book and read. If people are not going to take me to meetings, I can read for myself. I can seek out mentors within the firm itself or within the legal industry. I can attend industry events. And so from a very young age within my career, like I did that and I took initiative. And part of the reason why, so one of the things I did as a second year was to, after moving to Bowmans and then moving to the banking and finance department as discussed, I then got the opportunity to go overseas. So there's a program called, that's run by the Cyrus Vance Center, which is sort of a division of the New York City Bar. And the program has been going now for like almost 15 years. And it was started sort of at the end of apartheid, to help South African Black lawyers get international experience, corporate experience, right? Because again, in South Africa, a lot of traditionally Black lawyers just did bank, litigation and just like divorce or labor law, and not really like commercial law as we discussed. And so the program was set up by the New York City Bar through the Cyrus Vance Center to give Black lawyers in South Africa international exposure. And they get hundreds of applications a year, and they usually take between 2 and 3 lawyers a year. And so I applied the year before, got rejected, and then I applied again the following year and I got in. And so I got the opportunity to go to New York and get that international experience, where I worked with clients on Wall Street, was servicing all the big international banks, got exposed to international banking and finance like at a global level. And that experience by itself was life changing for me, and it just gave me so much confidence. I came back and I was like, okay, so I'm not stupid after all, because I'd gotten to a point in my career where my confidence was at an all-time low, right? Because you feel like you're not getting put on all the big deals, you're not getting the exposure
Can
that
I
you
just
want.
ask, what year PQE level were you when you were feeling low on confidence? Sort of two,
I
three
think
years? Or
like I think first year here. So articles, you come in, you're
okay,
doing well in varsity, you are like a superstar, and you get into this big firm and you're excited, and then like over a period of time, your confidence is eroded because you are not getting put on the big deals. You are left doing mundane work, and you are seeing your peers progress, and you're like, but why do I not know that? And then you realize, no, they know because they were taken to meetings, and they golf with the partners and the clients on the weekend, and you don't get invited to that stuff. So the New York stint came at the right time for me, and I really, really needed it because my confidence was at an all-time low. And I got there and I just did so well. Rob, literally, like they extended my stay, and they've never done that since or before, because the program is 12 months. I ended up staying there for 18 months. They extended my stay for like an extra
nice.
6 months. And it was just a great experience. I learned so much. I was put on big deals. Like I would go and meet like a director from Goldman Sachs in a meeting, and someone would actually ask for my opinion, and I'll be like, are you talk like it was amazing. It was life changing for me. Exactly. Like I would look around like, so Rory, what do you think? And I think that that really shaped the stuff I'm doing now, because I could see what proper mentorship could do for someone's confidence. And it plays such a significant role in whether someone becomes a good lawyer or not, because stuff just gets handed to you on a plate, right? So if someone, if a good example is this meeting thing, right? So if you go to a meeting, And in advance, a partner says, okay, these are the issues to be discussed at the meeting. Give me your opinion. And you do the research. Then, the day before the meeting, you lay out, what your answers are for the partner. Then they can give you feedback. Then when you go to the meeting, you have the confidence because you know what the issues are. It's been explained to you. And then the partner also has to, open up the room for you to talk. So a partner has to stop halfway through the meeting and say, Rory, what do you think? And give you that gap. That is proper mentorship. That is proper skills transfer, because you need someone to give you the chance. And in as much as I said, like, I did a lot of reading by myself, I tried to upskill myself through reading, but again, it goes back to the thing of there not being practical courses in South Africa. You can only upskill yourself so much by reading, right? You need to see the stuff in action, and you need to be part of it in action. And that was what was missing, right? Okay, now I've read all the books I can, but it's like saying I'm going to learn how to swim by reading a book. Like, you will learn how to swim by getting into the pool and swimming. You can't read about strokes while reading a book. So it was the same thing for me, and that's what New York gave me. It gave me the confidence to swim.
Oh, there's so many things in there you've said that I want to unpack. But I love that the terminology used about giving you the swimming analogy. Trying to learn it in a book, but actually, really, just New York gave you the opportunity to get in the pool and thrash about a bit, but then find your stroke, as it were. I recorded an episode of Legal Unicorns with a lady up in Joburg who you may know, called Nikita Lala, a former partner of the Big Five and now chief executive of her own firm, LNP Attorneys, and doing amazing work. And she had similar stories as yourself about being a young lawyer, a female of color in South Africa, and how she was held back and overlooked for certain things, and then often not so much overlooked, but sort of dismissed in a way of, oh, you'll be all right because you're a black female and somewhere you'll be fine, and that actually didn't help at all because she was being overlooked again. And she said, much the same as your New York experience, she went to London, my hometown, for a 4-year stint, working for, I think she worked for White and Case. And she said that allowed her, well, she didn't use your analogy, but that also allowed her to swim because it was the first time in her career where she wasn't being judged on the color of her skin. Either way, she wasn't being judged on her gender identity. She was being judged on whether she could do the job or not. And that allowed her to really just go, oh, wow, okay, so I'm on the same pitch as everybody else. Now I've got to be good, and I've got to be a good lawyer, as opposed to some of the, dare I say, nonsense that goes on in this country in some firms. And it's nice to hear that you had a similar growth opportunity, but also changed your lens somewhat on the world. And okay, well, it doesn't always have to be like this, and then allowed you to get to where you are. There's so many things that you just said there as well, but I think it's good for us to continue to shine a light on the fact that in some firms and in some environments, there'll be people going through what you went through still now. There'll still be, and whilst it's difficult to talk about in some circles, sometimes it needs to be continued to be said, because I know, and I obviously wouldn't dare mention any names, but I know people who contact me and they are often overlooked for work and often overlooked for the meetings, and the client relationships, and yeah, and again, dare I say it, in some cases that they believe, and probably rightly so, because of who they are and what they look like, and that has no place in society. I mean, it never had any place in society, but it certainly doesn't have any place in society in 2023, where people should be judged on the caliber of their character and nothing else. But it's something, I guess, that in your mentorship, although I know that you deal with slightly younger students, but I guess you probably deal with experienced lawyers as well, that you are also, you see, do you see that? Because I certainly see it and I get told about it.
No, definitely. I see that all the time. I see it through my mentorship group. I see it through other initiatives within the legal industry that I'm involved in. I see it with, and I've touched on this, that I do courses with UCT, and I approached UCT and I said I wanted to do banking and finance courses that provide practical sort of information about what a banking and finance transaction looks like. And they were, happy to collaborate with me. And I get like, I'll do like a 2-day webinar, right? 4 hours, where I'm like, this is a bank and finance transaction. This is, what it looks like from A to B, and go through the practical details of it and do scenario playing where, like, are you a borrower, a lender? How would you negotiate a document? And I get so many DMs about, okay, now we've done your 4-day webinar. Is there a course on this? Because literally, and people will share their stories with me, and people will be like, I'm a second year associate. I have never had a single person sit with me. I've been doing this for 4 years. Sit with me and say, this is what a bank and finance transaction looks like from start to finish. And it just breaks my heart to hear stories like that, and people are so hungry for the knowledge, and it stems from being overlooked, the fact that these law firms don't train people on an equitable basis, right? Some people get amazing training, some people don't get any training. And I think the international firms are a bit better about this, because a lot of the international training is then brought down to South Africa to say you actually need to have a proper training program where everyone has got equal access to the training, and you're not just training someone who you like and get along with in your office, or if they come over for a braai on the weekend because you are friends with their dad or whatever. So it definitely is like that. There is still an issue with transformation within the legal industry. Everyone can see that. And I also see it now from a different lens, because I am in-house, and I'm sure we're going to get to that just now, but I am in-house counsel for one of the big banks in South Africa currently. And I'm in the position of having to give work to lawyers in house, sorry, to lawyers in practice. And I still
Yeah.
have to insist now and say, I don't see black juniors on your matters. Like, how in this day and age with our demographics, and I know the black juniors in the banking and finance teams in all of the law firms, and I can't have a white male senior partner and like two male white juniors on a matter, because then where's the transformation going to come from? As I said, this banking and finance work and corporate work is such a small segment of the legal sort of profession, and so many people are thirsty for those skills and that knowledge and to work in those practice areas, and they still don't get it. So I see it from all angles. I see it from my mentorship group. I see it from being in-house counsel. I see it from engaging in other platforms within the legal industry. It's pervasive.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, and it's platforms like this where we can get to talk about it, and people listen and understand, because it won't just be in South Africa. It'll be across the African continent, but it'll also be in other parts of the world as well, where I've been lucky enough to work, and there's an element of nepotism, and there's an element of what other isms you might want to add. But it's not always a level playing field. And one of the things you touched on there, which, as you quite rightly said, in South Africa, given the demographic here, how is it not possible that there are people of all colours, uh, uh, on the matter or in the teams? And it's nice when someone like you, who values and understands the importance of the mentorship so much, um, is able, and you're in a position with your being in house, to be able to go, hang on a minute, let's have a little look at where this work is going. And one of the things that I've always said to clients, law firm clients, and I've tried to reflect in my own firm, is that just, if you're going to employ people and you're going to spend time paying them and paying them salaries and training them and giving them everything, then give everybody a chance. But I do think that it's important that we keep shining a light on the fact that everybody deserves a chance to work on the matters. And But I do think there's some changes going on in the legal industry that will open things up, and you're kind of touching on it here with your own skills, attitude, your experience in terms of taking control of one's one's career, and I want to touch on that in a second because I really like what you've done, and I think you are. And again, I'm not just saying this, but I do think you're a model for what lawyers are going to need to be doing now and in the future. Take control of your own destiny. Take control of your own training. You know, when I was talking to one of my consultants the other day, who happens to be 20 years younger than me, which made me feel frighteningly old. I said, you know, when I was in the workplace and stepping out of university, then you know you had to rely on the training and development you got from the firm that you worked for. But nowadays, you've got it all out there. You can take a YouTube course. You can do what do we have here? Get Smarter or Udemy. You can take control of that learning. You can do one of your mentorships. It's you know, if there's space, there's options, is what I'm trying to say. And for the right people who don't just sit and wait and take control, then they're going to be streets ahead of others. I just want to touch on very quickly before we go back to that and sort of the future of the how you see the legal industry going. But your move from working for fantastic firms, gaining some international exposure, your move some years ago now, I think, into in-house and specifically into the banking world. How did that come across? What kind of drove you to do it? Is it something that you would recommend? I guess obviously you're still there, so is it what kind of difference did it give you in your career and your skill set?
So I did. You're right. I am in house. So I moved from Norton Fulbright about 5 years ago, and I was at APSA, CIB in property finance for about 2 years, and now I'm currently at Nedbank, CIB property finance. And I definitely would recommend that, especially even if you ultimately want to go back and be a partner in a law firm. And I might do that sometime. I'm not sure. I'll see. But for me, I think it is great experience because you then get to see the client and how they work. Because as a banking and finance lawyer, for example, your clients are going to be the banks, especially if you act for lenders. And so it's great practical experience to get, even if long term you still want to be, stay in a law firm and be in practice and become a director and that sort of stuff and build out a practice. I always recommend this to say, look, again, having that long term mindset and thinking I'm going to be a lawyer for 50 years or whatever, taking a 2 or even a 4 year detour to try and go in house so that you get that practical commercial experience, I think is amazing. And it will definitely like put you steps ahead of any directors who have just only ever been in practice, because you have to have a different mindset. You understand how clients think, you get a more commercial understanding, you become a lot more practical in terms of the advice that you get, right? So an example is, if you want a legal opinion in banking, you don't want case law and tons of legal analysis. You just want a practical commercial solution. And you will get that thinking if you go in house, because you understand what lands and doesn't and what's helpful and not. So I definitely would recommend that anyone who wants to stay in practice in the long term, you can only elevate your skills if you do take that detour and go in house. Even if it's for a couple of months, or even if it's like permanently, like what I've done. And even before I moved in house, as a junior, I would put up my hand for secondment. So I think by the time I moved in house permanently, I'd done 2 or 3 secondments to sort of different clients of the firm, to again get that in-house experience and understand how clients work. But what obviously prompted the move for me was I became a mom. I got married, and practice was just a bit too much to juggle at the moment, and so I sort of needed the stability that comes with set hours of being in house while still being engaged and doing amazing work. And I must say, being in house has really provided that for me. I like now have 3 kids under the age of 7, so I'm still very much in the
Wow.
juggling motherhood stage, but I'm I'm slowly coming out of that. Like my youngest is almost out of diapers, and so I'm like, Hello world. I'm
You're
here.
getting your life back
I
finally.
am getting my life back. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I think, well, congratulations on building a wonderful family. And in addition to your amazing career and your mentorship, um, as a father of a couple of kids myself, I know that feeling of, when they, is it the 2 years, I think, or when they get to about four, you go,
Mm,
oh, I get my life back. What happened to the world?
100%. Yeah. Where you can sleep through the
Um,
night. People can sort themselves out. Yeah. It's great.
yeah. Um, I think that's a really interesting point you make about the crossover into in-house,
Mm,
certainly for one's career. And it's good to see that you obviously you joined a couple of incredible organizations there, and that, that are at the top of their tree. I spoke to Yolanda Myberg at ABSA a while
mm,
back, and she was talking. We had a very interesting talk about how strong South African banks are in the banking sector, and how, even during the financial crisis, the banks were really not really that. They were not exposed in the same way that perhaps the New York and UK banks were. But anyway, um, it is interesting. I've always, so obviously, as you know, I've spent 20 years helping lawyers with their career. 20 years this year. It's gone flying by, but I've always thought that, and I've always suggested, some time in house always gives you that aspect of, even if you, like you've just mentioned there, even if you do cross over back to practice, it gives you that insight, that invaluable insight in terms of how your advice might land, or, what they really need, in terms of, from a business perspective, from a commercial perspective, which obviously then enables you to create the right offering. Um, I've, I've got a couple of, I want to talk about where that's going, um, before I move on to your mentorship and some of the work you're doing around marketing and branding for lawyers as well. Um, but I just want to touch on this because I want to see what your thoughts are. I I believe, and and it's not just an opinion; it's backed up by research as well. That from a legal career perspective, we're going through some humongous changes at the moment, largely led by technology, and and the advent of COVID and fast tracked a lot of that. I speak to a lot of in-house counsel, not necessarily at the big organizations or the banks, but just generally in other organizations as well. And they are, in many cases, the first early adopters of new legal tech, which puts additional pressure on the practice lawyers to be cheaper, move faster, have better solutions. Are you finding that within your organization, that there's an appetite for technology, and therefore there's more pressure on your suppliers outside?
To be honest, not so much. I think, and at the legal tech conference that you mentioned last year, there was a lot of legal advisors from all of the banks. So it's not just the bank I'm at now. I think the banks are big beasts and they move very slowly. I think the legal advisors are itching for the adoption of technology in terms of the systems. And as I said, like there were a lot of young dynamic legal advisors, and some of them are like heads of departments at this legal tech and innovation conference. So I think as advisors, the sort of senior counsel or senior legal advisors within the banks, we do see the need for change and the adoption of technology, and we're very excited about it. And within our organization, for example, we are in the process of trying to update our own documents and try and adopt a more technologically advanced approach to how we do things. But the problems with banks is that they're such big organizations, and anything that has to be approved for a specific department has there's so much red tape involved. So I think actually there's a few players within the legal industry who are driving that, but I think for the bigger organizations, it's very difficult to implement change and sort of move people along in terms of like where we are with technology.
Yeah, that would make sense within the big beasts that are that banks are. I sort of think from a career perspective, and again, I'm really being very sort of generic with these statements without going into too much detail. But uh, when I first started recruiting 20 years ago for people moving from practice into in-house, the role of the in-house counsel was largely it wasn't as detailed as it is now, and I mean that by there wasn't the same pressures. You had your panel of lawyers that you probably played golf with, maybe got drunk with at the restaurant on Fridays. It was very relationship driven. But within a very quick period of time, there's been a lot of change in respect, and a lot of that comes down to price as well. A lot of I spent a lot of time in Asia, and a lot of the big organizations had big Chinese clients, and there was a lot of pressure put on them, not just from Chinese clients, but also American clients on the price. So what that meant was that reflected in the council starting to build out their own team. So the in-house teams became bigger because the pressure was on their general counsel to send less work outside. And then that started. And then if they do send work to external counsel, then it needs to be cost driven. And that meant that we started seeing the advent of the fixed fee arrangement within law firms rather than the billing by hour. So this is all just like slowly changing, a lot of it down to economics. But now I see a big change, and again, not so much in the bigger firms because they need a little bit more time because of the size. But there's the biggest change now is less cost driven and more by technology, and saying, well, look, there's so much legal tech coming through that the in-house counsel may be able to do a lot of it themselves, as opposed to sending it out to external counsel. So one of the things I'm talking to practice lawyers about, and partners, certainly of medium-sized firms, small to medium-sized firms, is don't be scared by the changes that are coming. Don't be, don't read Dr. Richard Susskind's book, The End of Lawyers, and start panicking that, robots are going to take over your job. It's not, in fact, remember, it's your industry. Remember, it's you. You're the lawyer. It's your industry. Embrace the technology and use it to offer the best service. I was chatting to a lady the other day, managing partner of her own firm here. I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning her name, Nicoline Schumann, fantastic lady, fantastic lawyer. And she said, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but she said something like, because I said to her, look, you seem to be taking on every technology going. She said, look, I fully embrace legal tech because I didn't get into law to just use a template and change the name at the top of it. I got into law to advise my clients, and therefore there's all these wonderful tools I can now use. So I can use some of those and then work out what the best solution is for my client. And I thought, well, I actually said to her, you, as a practice lawyer, you need to tell all of your colleagues that. You need all of your practice lawyer friends, because that's the way to treat new technology. It does tie in, however, with where careers are going. And I think we are seeing an advent of more consultants, more people working for themselves, more people looking for different options when they've had a family, for instance, and wanting to stay in practice, but tending to work for themselves and embracing technology, and therefore being able to charge a bit less. And on that note, we've just done some research recently that LexisNexis in the UK came out with a research report that stated that 33% of all solicitors in the UK will be working in the gig economy, meaning they'll work for themselves, by 2026. And then that's only 3 years away. And then by 2030, that could be upwards of 70%. So we're talking to getting towards 3/4 of all lawyers, and this is globally, not just in the UK, could be working in some way for themselves, embracing technology, which means that the banks and the other clients will largely get quicker, better service. And I think we are, and I bring this up because I think lawyers are going to have to start using your mentality, especially young lawyers, of taking control of their career, taking control of their own learning. Don't sit there and wait for someone to teach you. Actually get out there and go and do it yourself. So with that in mind, if I may bring, please, could you tell us about your mentorship and your
Sure.
program that you've developed? Because it is fantastic. And please tell me.
I, I definitely will. But before I go on and
Hmm.
talk about the mentorship program, you've also touched on a few brilliant ideas and concepts, and I totally agree with you. Like, as lawyers, we obviously do need to not be afraid of technology and try and use it as much as possible. And the interesting thing that I am seeing is a lot of like the smaller firms or smaller teams are actually starting to make inroads into sort of the traditional work done by the law firms, right? And if the law firms are not careful, the smaller firms and uh, sort of one or two man shows where people are using social media to brand themselves, are using technology, are actually starting to get more of the clients that the bigger firms normally would. And so, and I mean, look, the South African firms, law firms, some of them are doing well and they are trying to embrace technology, and they have a couple of programs where they are trying to be at the forefront of technological advancements. But I do think in general the South African market is a bit behind from, like, for example, the law firms in London or some of the law firms in New York. But that, it always happens like that. So, and the other thing you touched on was the different legal careers, and for me that's the most exciting thing, right? Yes, there is disruption within the legal profession, but the fact that you have new careers like legal design and legal operations is amazing, and it leaves room for people who might not necessarily want to practice law in the traditional sense. And I always say about myself, like, I'm lucky that at least I know that I like the law. Some other people are in the middle of their careers and they don't know where to go, and they don't even know if they like the law itself. And a lot of people would have bad experiences and think, I don't like the law. But no, you actually were just working with toxic people. You actually are a good lawyer and you like the law. And so it's the new careers that are coming up, I think, are great for people who like certain aspects of the law and maybe might want to use their creativity or sort of dabble in other stuff like project management. And that's where, like, the legal ops role comes, right? So if you've got project management experience and then you've got legal experience, you can marry the two together. And so I think it's fantastic that you have this new rise of, like, different types of legal careers. But the one thing I'm most excited about is the rise of the legal influencer. And this is, again, something I'm seeing a lot of in the UK. I'm seeing a lot of it in the US, where you have lawyers who are using social media to actually build a brand for themselves, to build work for themselves, where they're sharing legal content, but they are not monetizing through um, providing legal services. And that's sort of the journey that I'm on, actually. I started off on
I was
social
going to say,
media
like
wanting
you.
to talk about the law. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly where
Yeah.
I'm going. And I'm seeing, and I mean, I've been following a couple of international legal influencers now for the last 2 3 years, and the path for most of them is always the same. They leave practice or they leave in-house, then they go into consulting, and then after, as legal advisors, to your point, like, where it's like the gig economy, they take different jobs as they're going, and then ultimately they transition 100% out of law and they provide legal related services, right? And they provide services to the legal industry. I just did, for my mentorship group, for example, I interviewed Yusha Davidson in January, and he started BriefCo in the South African Legal Technology Network. So a lot of these legal influencers are either creating legal tech solutions and starting companies that provide services to the legal industry. Some of them monetize by creating digital products, so online courses, online templates, and they monetize like that. Some of them go on and consult, right? And so they monetize by providing consulting services where they can travel around the world. And I mean, since COVID, we all know that as a lawyer you can work from anywhere in the world. And there was and COVID was a test case for that, and so like it's very difficult for law firms to like go back and retract because we've seen that it works. So a lot of the legal influences, especially internationally, people are like traveling around the world and working as consultant lawyers as and when they want, and then in between they're like attending LinkedIn influencer events and YouTube influencer events. So I think the rise of the legal influencers is very interesting, and it's a new career opportunity for people, I think.
I agree completely, and I think it's fascinating to watch. Right? I mean, I think again, just touching on what we've been talking about there from a career perspective, and I'm sure this is something that you talk to your mentees about. But if you and I touched on it when I did that tech speak about the future of legal careers. I kind of touched on it and said, look, well, 20 years ago, these were your three options. Practice,
Mm,
in-house, maybe an ops type role. But now there's so many other things because with the advent of technology and with the fact that there's people like you mentioned there, the influencers who are looking around and people are taking a step back a minute and going, okay, so well, obviously company A needs legal services and they would traditionally go to law firm Y. But in between that, there are so many aspects and so many things that can be done in a slightly different way, more suited to the individual or to the company. They can be adopt technology for certain parts of it, but it can be delivered in a different way. I also think about that with regards to legal careers and the work that my team and I do. We're always forever looking. Let's look at the journey. Let's look at from A to B, but in between that, how do people want it delivered? And that leads you to some really exciting ways of delivering the services, and therefore, engaging with people on social media or platforms like Patreon or whatever it may be. I think there are and there are other platforms coming, not just from an influence perspective, but also from a how to source work, how to source clients. We're involved in a platform called Umbi, which is there specifically been designed for lawyers globally to be able to access clients if they're in practice, work if they're a consultant, or jobs if they're on the job market, but remain anonymous and have only their skills and experience out there, therefore removing any unconscious bias or discrimination, and making sure that if you can do the job, you will be found within the search. So there's platforms like this coming up and others that are really meaning the whilst the job may not change, you have to offer a legal opinion to your client X and Y. There's better ways and creative ways of getting to the end journey. So that is fascinating. That is. I mean, I find it utterly fascinating, and I'm sure you do too. But just before we move on to quickly onto your mentorship, the social media marketing branding part of it is obviously something you're amazing at. And for anyone that doesn't follow you, they should. And we'll get to your at the end. I'll ask you for your handles because people should. Some of your content is excellent. Especially as a mother of three and working full time and doing everything. I sometimes see you videoing. I'm like, where did she have the time to do this? But it's amazing stuff and it's really engaging as well. But is this something that you help people with as part of your program? Is that part of your program or side on the side or what?
I mean, I talk about it to my mentees, I'll touch on the mentorship group, but I'll straddle the social media and branding aspect of it.
Yeah,
So
please.
the social media, not the social media, the mentorship group actually started because I was getting a lot of DMs on LinkedIn because I started being active on LinkedIn about 2.5 years ago. And it was actually during COVID where I was so frustrated being at home by myself. I had some time because, work slowed down for a bit. And I just wanted to connect with other lawyers and like just talk about, my frustrations at home. And so I started first with LinkedIn, then I moved on to Instagram, and now I'm on TikTok. And I started getting a lot of DMs of people wanting to like asking me to mentor them, and I was like, I just don't have the time. I've got 3 kids, I've got a full-time job, and I'm still doing trying to build my own brand online. And so I was like, but I can at least have an hour a month, right? Or to mentor people and to actually give back. And it goes back to, like, determining what your values are. And so one of my values is giving back. And I wasn't living that value. There was no way in which I was giving back, specifically within the legal profession. So I started the online mentorship group, and it's free, and I do it once a month on Zoom. And I either structure it as I focus on a specific topic, where I will prepare like a proper presentation or training session on a specific topic, and then sometimes I will invite guests, and you have come on as one of my guests,
Thank you for the invite.
where if
Yes.
you yeah, it was amazing, and you got such great reception from the mentees on that. And you were talking about career development and what recruiters
Mm.
look out for and how to advance your career. So I will have specific guests coming to speak about specific topics, or sometimes I will speak about a certain topic myself. And sometimes we change it around, and maybe like every third or fourth session, we deal with specific questions that the mentees would have given me in advance. And I'll like lump all of those together into a specific theme for the session. And then we'll go through it. And a lot of it is around, career progression, dealing with microaggressions at work, toxic work environment, skills development, advancement. Like those are the sort of the general themes. But to go back to social media, marketing and branding, I have done a couple of those sessions where it's like a training session on, how to build your social media profile as a lawyer, how to brand yourself as a lawyer. And I think those are skills that every lawyer needs to have. And one of the things I often talk to my mentees about is skill stacking, the fact that you need to stack different skills as a lawyer and then use them and deploy them in a way that's unique to you. That's how you're going to stand out. And so, as a minimum, every lawyer needs to be competent. You need to know the law. You need to be able to read and write well and speak well as a lawyer. But that is the bare minimum, right? And in a tough job market, you need to ask yourself, how am I standing out? And the way you do that is to stack different skills. And one of the skills I think you need to have on your stack as a lawyer, in addition to your legal skills, is knowing how to brand yourself and how to work on the company of you. I see myself as the company of Rori, and you need to brand yourself regardless of whether you don't necessarily need to want to become a legal influencer, right? And you can think, I'm going to be in this law firm and make partner and stay here for the rest of my life. But even within that context, I always say a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And whether you like it or not, you have a brand and people have a perception of you. So I think it's better for you to be at the forefront of crafting what that brand is and understanding what brand you want, as opposed to just letting the world and the universe build a brand for you. So like every lawyer definitely needs to be branding themselves. And the easiest way to brand, yes, the traditional way was to write articles, go talk at industry events, um, but I just think there's so much, you spend so much time, like, for you to publish an article on the South African Law Journal, that's like an academic article, and literally five nerdy lawyers are going to read it. Okay, not nerdy lawyers, but like, your
I know what
clients
you mean.
don't read the stuff that yeah, like your clients don't read the stuff that you print in the South African Law Journal. Or if you spend like 4 days drafting an article, even if it's for business day, right? At least business day or like those traditional publications have got a wider reach. It's about reach, right? And maximizing your time. And for me, social media is free distribution, right? There are no gatekeepers. There's no one telling you can and can't publish. And these are some of the like sort of the gatekeeping that happens, especially within the big law firms, is if you're a junior and you want to write an article, you have to jump through so many hoops. It needs to be reviewed by 10, okay, not 10, probably 2 3 different people. You need to do so much research, like, and it will take you, like, I don't know, like 2 weeks to do this thing. It has to go through 3 layers of authority or people to sign off on it, and then you end up having like 20 or 30 people reading it in derabas. Like, it makes no sense to me. And so when I came to that realization, and again, I mean, the social media thing for me is relatively new. I started like 3 or 4 years ago. It was free distribution. You can pick up your phone and record a quick video, and it can reach like 30,000 people. Like, it's insane to me. Like, when I think about it, it's crazy, and I just don't understand why people are not like leveraging the opportunity and crafting their own brand. And it's not about you showing up on LinkedIn the day before you leave your current job and you're looking for a job and you say, "Hi, I'm looking for a job." Like no one knows who you are. The other day I posted a post on LinkedIn about how branding and crafting your image as a lawyer is the same as dating. Like professional relationships are like dating. You're not gonna rock up on your first date and go in for the kiss. I'm like, dude, you're coming on too strong, and you're not gonna be like
I love
proposing
it.
after the first date. And it's the same thing with
Yeah.
asking people for work. Like, you don't just rock up on LinkedIn and we have never seen any content from you. We don't know what area of practice you're in. And then for the first time, you see a post from you and you're like, please hire me. I'm looking for a job. Like, it's like, dude, you're coming on too strong. Like, invite me out for coffee or something. Like, send me a text about the
I love it.
latest, business day article that's of interest to you. And so, if you're only trying to craft your brand when you're in the desperate position of looking for work, then it's too late for you. And even if you're happy where you are now, you don't know what opportunities are out there for you. And literally, for me, branding and social media marketing is like literally standing on a hilltop with the biggest microphone in the world and saying, "Hey, I'm a great lawyer. Want to work with me? Do you want to hire me? Do you want to give me money? Do you want to buy my products?" And it's all free. Like, you don't have to pay for it. So I'm just like, yeah, it's exciting for me. I think it's an amazing opportunity. I think all lawyers should do it. And I mean, some of the stuff that has happened to me, like do and I do, like, literally my social media is like probably like 10% of what I do from a work perspective. I literally don't spend that much time on it. I batch create content on the weekend. Like every day I'll be inspired and I have a little notebook and I write down uh, ideas for content, and then on like a Saturday morning I'll sit and I'll batch create content. But I mean, I would not have this opportunity to come onto your podcast if I wasn't on social media, right? And it's an amazing opportunity. And I would not have met someone like you if I wasn't on social media. Yes, I know we go way back, when I was a junior, but like over the recent years, like I've had, like, even the opportunity to go to the Legal Tech and Innovation Conference. I got that because of my social media content. So it's,
Well, we
yeah,
wouldn't have
so
met
many
if we
opportunities.
didn't both put ourselves out there. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Like, if we
Exactly.
both didn't embrace the power of social media from a marketing perspective, we would never have met. So yes, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry I interrupted,
Yeah.
but carry on.
Yeah. So I there's so many opportunities out there for lawyers and to get exposure to these different careers. And yes, you might be happy. And it doesn't mean that, because you're a legal influencer, now you're gonna leave your job. I'm very happy at my 9 to 5. I still have my current job and I'm doing that. But again, I always say, I like analogies, and I always use the analogy of saying, your job is like, you should think of your job as like how you would treat your spouse. You don't expect your spouse to fulfill you 100%, right? They're not going to fulfill you the way your children do, or the way your siblings do, or the way your friends do. You get different things from different relationships, and they feed your soul differently. So why would you put all of this pressure on your 9 to 5? You want great money, you want flexibility, you want skills development, you want career advancement. It's so unfair to 9 to 5s. And employers now are meant to, fulfill people in so many ways. It needs to be like a place where you make friends. Like, no, go to church. Like, your work environment should not be like a place where you find community. And I think corporates are doing a very good job of building a sense of community around work. Even the politics of your organizations need to align with you. You need to be pro black, pro LGBTQI. You need to, like, it's just, there's just too much pressure that's placed on employers. And so if you then find an outlet for yourself for to find your creativity. So for me, the things that we're lacking in-house, okay, what's great about in-house, it is good money, it is relatively good flexibility. You don't have the crazy hours that you normally would have, that you would have in practice. But what are the things that are not great about in-house? You don't get to meet clients, you don't have a sense of community of meeting other lawyers, you don't have the latest updates in terms of the law, you don't necessarily go to as many legal conferences. And so that's what the stuff that's missing in my job is what I found through legal influencing in my social media content, right? One of the things I really enjoyed about being in practice was training juniors and teaching juniors. And there aren't a lot of juniors to train or teach in a bank, right? And so I found that through my mentorship program. And so the fact that I'm doing all of the stuff on the other side makes me even more fulfilled in my job, and it puts less pressure on my employer. And that's what I have to say about that.
Ah, you have this innate ability to say in about 5 minutes, say about 50,000 things that I want to pick up on that could each individually be about a 10-minute podcast. But I'm going to try because it's brilliant. And you are so right with everything you say there. There was a couple of things about that you picked up on there. Certainly around the social media development, about being in the business. I can't remember your exact analogy, but being in the business of you, or being in, effectively being in the business of you. And that's the way I see it very much as well, is this is a chance for you. What I see from your social media is not, or the impression I get is not, you're not sitting there going, look at what I know. You're going, what actually comes through to me, and I hope to your other followers, is she has a genuine passion for law. She has a genuine passion for the business that she is in. And that comes, to me, comes shining through. And I think that's something that a lot of, when I'm advising people on their LinkedIn profiles or their social media, which I don't do a lot of, but I occasionally get asked, is just be genuine and be interested, and show that, again, this is where those old school articles make a mistake, because, because you would have been there in the law firm. They go, right, well, look, you're in tax, write something about the new tax law coming out. And as you said, 5 people have read it. One of them's your mum. They're not, no one's reading it really. Whereas social media gives you the opportunity to go, or to come across as someone who has genuine passion for tax law, as opposed to having to write the article. That is really interesting. I think a lot of your mentees could learn a lot from that. But I also like your point there, and it ties into a few of the other things we've talked about. Which is about, there's so much pressure on the company, and the poor companies. I sometimes see them that they're having to react to the latest thing and show that they are really and they genuinely are probably for the next thing that's coming through, but they have to be all things to all people, and actually they shouldn't have to do that. There's too much pressure on them. It's down to the individual to, like you say, to access friends through church or their community or their schools, enjoy their partner and their family and their kids and their career and their company is one part of that. I do feel sorry for some corporates sometimes who just must sit there and go, okay, so what do we? Okay, and when what they really should do is just consistently look at their own values as a company and go, this is who we are. And that needs refreshing sometimes. And I know, and I'm sure you've been privy to it sometimes as well, where companies, they kind of do the values and as a bit of a side issue and go, what are our values again? Actually, but it's really, really, really important. In fact, I'm looking over there because our values are on the wall in our office, so that people we refresh it every 6 months. We're like, are we being true to those values, which are courage and curiosity and humility and things like that? And what you find is, if you live your values as a company, you genuinely live your values, then you attract people to work for you that also hold the same values, which is ultimately what you want. But this is fascinating because you really are leading the way in the social media space and becoming an influencer. And it's great to see. And it really is, your posts are engaging. You're building your audience with your mentor program hugely. But like I say, what comes shining through and what your colleagues in the law could probably learn from across the world, not just in South Africa, is that you are genuine when you're, and that's what comes through. You appear to have a real genuine passion for your subject and for wanting to help other people get on, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, thank you so much for that feedback, Rob. And the one strategy I always give people on social media is before you post something, you must ask yourself why someone would care about what you have to say. And a lot of the stuff that people post on social media is about, as you alluded to, it's me, showing how brilliant I am. People don't care about your brilliance. Like, people don't care about the awards that you get. People don't care about how amazing you say you are. People only care about whether they can find value in your content. So whenever I post, I always think, is this going to be valuable for someone? And obviously, we all have vanity posts. I also post, "Oh, I've gotten this award," but you should follow the 80-20 rule. I say 20% of your content should be like vanity content, and then 80% should be about providing value, because that's how you grow an audience, and that's why people will give you their attention. I think the most scarce resource is attention, and that's what branding is about. It's getting people's attention. That's what business development for lawyers is. It's getting people's attention. And you move from this, like, I forgot what it's called, but there's like an official term for it, of the process of um, selling and getting someone to buy something you have. First you get people's attention, then you move on to trust, and then that's when, and then going with the next level is doing the sale or getting the pitch or whatever. And you need the most amount of attention, and then sort of the funnel goes down to a point where people then actually trust what you say, and then you can monetize, whether that is getting briefed on a matter, selling a product. It's the same whatever industry you're in. And the thing with social media marketing or branding yourself is that you're getting, again, to the analogy of a microphone, you're getting people's attention, and people are like, and I when I started, I didn't have anything to sell. Right. So when I started in social media marketing, I was genuinely putting out content there to let people know that, hi, I'm Rory, I'm a lawyer, and I have these skills. Right. And then I started with the mentorship stuff. And if you give without the expectation of giving back, you won't force, like, people will just start giving. And I've started to get so many opportunities from having that mindset. And if you delay your ask for the longest time, then what you get back is like tenfold, right? So a good example of that is like my mentorship program. I remember when I started the program, I set out like a long list for to the mentees, and I said, because a lot of them were like, "Why are you doing this mentorship program for free?" And I still get asked that. Like, people will call me, like, or SMS me on LinkedIn and say, "So what is the charge?" I'm like, "No, it's free." And they're like, "Why?" They're thinking probably, I'll try and suck them in and do like one or two sessions for free, and then it becomes like an escalating membership fee. I'm like, "No." And I wrote this long letter to my mentees. I was like, my I'll never monetize the mentorship program. But what actually started happening is I've started getting law firms coming to ask me to go and mentor their juniors, and they want to pay me. I would never have seen that coming.
They can pay you.
Like,
Yeah.
never. Yeah, like, I like, literally. And so this is the thing, right? You need to
Amazing.
give without the expectation of getting back, if you genuinely, and people can sense that authenticity, right? As you were saying. um and so I will never monetize the mentorship program, but I'm also like on a journey, right? So one of the things I've started doing is I've started selling legal merch. So I've got like these t-shirts for lawyers, and people can, and I'll give out my handles at the end, as you said, so people can check out like
Yeah,
my
and we'll
social
include them at
media
the bottom as
marketing.
well, to make sure
Okay,
that people get, yeah.
great. So I've started selling lawyer t-shirts, and we're going to be expanding the brand to like hoodies and cups and station, like, there's like a whole vision around that. And then the other thing I'm working on is doing online courses around the stuff I'm teaching at UCT. So as I said, like, I do lecture, no, not company law, like I do a course on due diligence, on syndicated transactions, and general, different types of banking and finance transactions, which is very practical. It takes people through like step 1 to like step 10. It gives them a practical insight on how to do these big sort of financing transactions. And I'm working on sort of translating that onto a digital platform, so online learning, when people have access to that sort of material. And again, it goes back to democratizing access to knowledge. and not having gatekeepers. So that's also like a long-term project I'm working on for MoLAWoo. But so that's sort of how I'm going to monetize. But the mentorship program is a pillar of what we do, and then through that, we have other ways of like monetizing, and the t-shirts, the merch, the online courses, but all of that is like a work in progress.
That's amazing. It's really amazing, and without sounding like, I don't want to sound sycophantic at all, but it's really exactly the right way to go, and it's amazing because again, it speaks to the fact that you are such a genuine person, and you genuinely want to give back, and you genuinely want to help others that are reaching out to you, and it's good to see that the firms are now looking at what you're doing and asking you to come in and you're able to monetize that way. Again, it's exactly the right thing the right advice to be helping people with, and it's exactly the right. It's going to be a huge success. I've seen some of your merch; it's amazing. In fact, I think at the Tech Fest that we were at, there was a lot of interest in it. And did you have T-shirts at that time? I think you had T-shirts at that time. I think that, or maybe cups as well. I think you were doing, but it's good to see that you're digitizing the course content, and then people will be able to purchase that as well. But the key word there that speaks to me is democratizing the learning. And again, I don't want to do a plug here for a company that we're involved in, but as I say, the UMBI platform that we're fully supporting is about democratizing the legal recruitment process so that everybody benefits financially from that process, and brings global opportunities to people from all corners of the world. And that, so it sounds like what you and I are doing is really genuinely trying to open it up and give everyone a fair crack, as it were.
No,
Sorry.
I agree with that, and I think is it Umbi or Ambi? Umbi.
UMBI.
Ambi. Yes,
Yeah.
and we spoke a bit about Ambi when we're up in Joburg, and I have
Mm.
subsequently checked out the platform, and I think it's really, really great. And I mean, you and I have had long conversations about this, and you yourself, I align a lot with your values, and I think that's why we've clicked. And I know that one of the things you're really passionate about is giving back to the legal profession in South Africa. And
Yeah.
we've had this discussion before, and I think through GRM and Ambi, you are definitely doing that, and you definitely do live your values. And I know that one of your values is equity and equitable access to sort of platforms and opportunities within the African continent. I know that you do some
Thank you.
business in the UK and you do some business in Hong Kong, but I think you have a very specific passion for South Africa. And one of the things that in the last time we had coffee, you spoke a lot about, you can make money from the legal profession in South Africa and be based elsewhere, and you're not giving back to the continent, and you're not giving back to South Africa. And that's something you're so adamant about, and which I think, GRM and UMBI does really, really well, where you invest in the legal profession and you try and give back in South Africa without just extracting value and then like taking it to the UK. So I applaud you for that, and I really, really
Well, thank
also
you,
love your
Rory.
content.
Thank you. I really, really do appreciate that. It's so nice to hear from you, someone I respect so much, that that you do understand that I'm genuine where I'm coming from. I just on those two notes again. I if you are going to, if you, not you, but if the royal, if a company, I believe, is going to benefit from a local resource like the great skills and attitudes and workforce we have in here in South Africa, then I believe that you should commit, which is why I moved here. I did the same in Asia. I did the same in the Americas. If you're going to go and make money out of that continent or that country, you commit, you put back, you train, you develop, you pay your taxes, And you embrace the culture and what it needs. What I see and what you see is this need to democratize the legal sector, whether it's through learning and development or whether it's through careers. People need to benefit because at the moment it's all one-way traffic. I say the same thing with careers,
100%.
and that's where
And
Umbi
you
comes
need,
in. Is sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that you need to remove the gatekeepers. There's too many
Mm,
gatekeepers, and the traditional people
100%.
who've benefited from the system, want to hold on to power, right? And you can understand why. Um, and so
Yeah,
you just need to find systems, and technology is a great way of removing gatekeepers. By the way, so 100% agree with you.
absolutely. And times, I completely agree. And times are changing. 75% of the workforce now is millennial or Gen Y, right? That might mean that Gen X in my generation are in positions of power, but they're leaving the workforce in the next decade. And millennials and Gen Y want to work in a different way, and they want democratization. They want to make sure that I say it about Umbi, I say about the career section. You For the last 20 years, the law firm or the company has held all the power. They've said, I've got the job. And then you can see it on LinkedIn. Someone will put a job up. You've got 750 applicants straight away. They're all from all corners of the earth. I mean, if I was looking for a job, I'd look at that and go, but they've got the job. Now what's happening? And this is the biggest change in the career space, especially in legal, is that people are waking up to the fact that you hold the power. You are the person. Rory, you've got the skills, you've got the experience, you've got the admissions. You're the one who put themselves through training and development. And when all the lawyers realize that, then they put themselves in a position of going, hang on a minute, you need me as much as I want you. So we are seeing a much more symbiotic relationship appear, rather than it all being one-way traffic, which you and I are alluding to. I'm very conscious of the time. I could speak to you all day, but I've got to let you get on with work. Just as a final question before you please give us your handles, you kind of touched on it there anyway, which is where your program is going in terms of digitizing some of the content and working closer with UCT and your merchandise as well. But is there anything in the near future in your plans that you're working on? Anything you'd like to share with us?
No, not at the moment. I mean, the legal courses are like literally over the next couple of months. I am going to be launching a new website because people keep asking me, like, there isn't like one place where, I have all my stuff and people can go and see and contact me. So by the end of April, I'm hoping to have my new website go up. And I did do a rebranding. So my company used to be Off Council, and then I changed it to MoLAWoo, and we did a whole rebranding. So April and May we'll be doing a lot of work around having the website, and you'll be able to find all of my links to all my legal content in one place. Uh, you'll have like an automated signing up for the mentorship program. If people want to join the mentorship program, as I said, it's free. They can just contact me on social media, just message me, and I'll just add your email address, and then you'll be part of the subscription list, and you'll get updates as to when our next sessions are. And so, yeah, so in the near future, the thing that's going to be coming up is the website, and we are also selling the t-shirts now before they go into the website. Our online store is also going to be up on the website as soon as it's up, but you can like buy t-shirts from me if you just follow me on social media, and then just message me, and we will be rolling out sort of 2 or 3 new designs of the t-shirts over the next 3 months. And then the online learning stuff is like a long-term project, but that's definitely going to be rolled out hopefully by the end of the second quarter this year.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant, and it's been an amazing journey so far to witness. And thank you again for inviting me on to speak to your mentors last year. What tell us before I let you go back to work? What are your handles? Where can people find you on social media?
Okay, so on LinkedIn, I am Rori Mzozoyana, so the name will just come up. On TikTok and on Instagram, I am Rori_legal counsel.
Okay, and we will put those in the description below. I implore everybody to buy some of the merch. If I remember rightly, it says "Eat, Sleep, Law, Repeat." Or
Yes, it
there's
says
a
eat,
strap
sleep,
line.
law. It says eat, sleep, law, repeat. I'm
I love it.
working. I I posted a new T-shirt design last week which says I put the lit in litigation, and it's got like fire over like the scales of justice. I'm working on one now that says what what banking and finance law is my jam, and you've got like a picture of a jam jar. So it's
Brilliant.
funny designs like that. There's a couple of designs we're working on at the moment, but everything will be up on my social media.
Well, look, I want to put myself down for one of those hoodies. I do love a good hoodie, so I'm going to put myself down for one of those when they come out. But look, I'm just going to wrap it up there and say thank you so much for your time. You really are a trailblazer in South African law. You are exactly what Legal Unicorns podcast is all about. It's about finding those people that are genuinely shaping this next generation, the new generation coming through, really embracing a new way of doing business. And you are the epitome of that. I implore everybody listening to this to follow you on socials. And Rory, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rob. You know, I love talking to you. Like we could talk until next week, but
We probably
thank you so
could.
much. I love your podcast. I love your podcast. I think you're doing amazing work. And I've really enjoyed all your past episodes. So thank you so much. It was an honor for me to be on here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.